I want to turn now to New York Congressman Tom Reed. He is a Republican and co-chair of the Bipartisan Problem Solvers Caucus. Well, it's good to see you, Congressman. If ever we needed a problem solved, it's now, with millions of Americans literally their futures depending on what happens. I want to ask you about one of the holdups here, which is that there's disagreement about what to do about this $600 payment. As I understand it, the disagreement within the Republican caucus is either renew that or tie it to what people were making before they lost their job because of coronavirus, which would be a much smaller amount of money. Where do you stand on that, Congressman?
I personally believe that a percentage of your wages, that with unemployment, you shouldn't receive more than what you had before you went into unemployment status. And so I'm a believer that we can do a percentage replacement of your wages, and you would be in a position to assist families during this crisis. But at the same time, this financial disincentive of getting back to work, we're having small businesses in our district and across the country going without employees because people financially are staying on the sidelines.
Do you really think that that's a major problem, more of a problem than the number of people for whom $600 is allowing them to barely scrape by?
Well, that's why I've always advocated maybe a benefit calculation of up to $600, no more than X percent of what you were earning before you went to unemployment. That's a reasonable compensation, and it would also address the differences between New York City wages versus those in our district where in Western New York, $72,000 unemployment benefit, which this equates out to with the $600 amount, is much different in regards to city wages versus rural wages of Western New York.
As you well know, the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, and Leanne just reported on this, says we won't get the text of the Senate bill until next week. What is the holdup? I mean, this is not something that snuck up on anybody. The deadlines were there. We knew it was coming. You're on the Bipartisan Problem Solvers Caucus. What can be done here? How do we get this done quickly?
I'm still very confident we are going to get this done before August 1st, thereabouts, first week of August, because it has to be done. You got the expiration of unemployment. You got kids returning to schools in areas of the country here the second week of August. So there's a lot of practical leverage that's going to force Congress to do its job. Now, I agree with you. I'm so frustrated with the political theater and the posturing and the yelling and everyone trying to get their 5 minutes of fame on national TV. We don't need that, but that's the reality of Washington, D.C. right now. But I can assure you there's many of us, especially Problem Solvers Caucus members, that are working behind the scenes to find that common ground to get this done for the American people.
Well, let me ask you if some of that common ground is some of the things that you're working on. I know you've been trying to get more money for local governments to help teachers and first responders, music to the ears of local governments. You've joined more than 40 other members of Congress in a letter calling on House leadership of both parties to prioritize support for child care providers. What movement, if any, are you seeing just on those fronts?
I'm seeing positive movement behind the scenes. I mean, this is how it gets done when you're sincere about trying to get to common ground. The conversations we've had over the last 2 weeks have really moved the needle to a positive outcome. On the issue of direct local aid in particular, that is coming in the right direction, and also the issue of child care, and that's related to school funding too. So that conversation kind of goes hand in hand, and so I'm glad to see those priorities coming forward as areas of common ground in this bill.
I also want to ask you before you go about a fellow member of your state's delegation, Democratic New York Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez. And as you well know, on a floor speech Thursday, she detailed derogatory and expletive-laced comments that she says were made by Congressman Ted Yoho of Florida. He addressed the remarks but denies the expletive that she says he called her. She says these comments speak more broadly to our culture and to men's overall treatment of women. What do you make of those exchanges, Congressman?
Yeah, very disappointing. The institution needs to do better than that, and so I don't agree with my colleague using that type of language against my colleague from New York. That is not what we should be doing. We need to set the example for the country, and I agree with the silent majority of America, I believe, that says, you know what, D.C., stop acting like kids. be responsible adults and treat each other with respect. The basic things we all learned in kindergarten that were taught by my mother, same type of culture should be here in Washington, D.C. It's just a shame at times we miss that.
Congressman Tom Reed, is your Wikipedia page correct? You're the youngest of 12 children?
I am. I got 8 older, raised by a single mom. My father passed when I was 2, and I'll just tell you, 8 sisters and 3 older brothers. That makes us a problem solver.
I have 7 brothers and 4 sisters, so as the youngest of 12 as well, I know what that means to be the problem solver in the group. Thank you so much,
Chris. We'll have to get together.
We appreciate you taking the time.
That's the best. Thank you.
Yeah, let's hope this doesn't go on so long. It never happens.